Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to episode number 4 of our live 2026 critical reasoning series. Today, we're chatting about boldface and legalese problems. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. So, what I've been saying throughout this series, first 3 episodes, and thank you so much, everybody, for all the kind words that I'm seeing popping across the screen. Makes me happy. Great to see kind of the same folks week after week. So, thank you so much for that. Um, Boldface questions. Yeah, a lot of what we've been doing in this series is kind of saying, hey, great performance on critical reasoning comes from having a nice, consistent process, right? So when we talk about a general kind of strength and weaken question, we say, okay, get me that heart of the passage. So conclusion, support, their words, not mine. Then we talked about paradox and discrepancy questions. Nice, clean structure, right? Thing one, but thing two, make sure you get it in their words. Assumption questions, same thing as strengthen and weaken. Conclusion, support, their words, not yours. Nice, clean cross-elimination. Okay, now boldface questions. I will say the same things as a general principle. Like, how do you get really great at verbal? How do you get really great at anything on the GMAT? How do you reach your potential on the GMAT? It's a consistent approach. Do things methodically, do things the same way every single time. Make sure it's not your words, that it's the author's words. But boldface, some of these get pretty kooky. And these are some of the harder questions that you see on GMAT critical reasoning. So it's going to be a little bit more than 10, maybe something like 12% of all GMAT critical reasoning questions are these boldface style. But they tend to have a lot of variation in structure. And some of them, yes, are very easy. Some of them are super, super hard. I would say of the hardest questions, a disproportionate number are boldface. They tend to be a little bit longer. They tend to be structured a little bit complex. Now, with all that said, that still means that having a nice, consistent process, being really methodical, thinking structurally is still super important. But in some cases, there's extra elements to the structure. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to warm you up with a nice, one of the rare, not rare, but one of the fairly unusual, relatively easy ones, nothing super hard, because I want you to work on just getting your technique completely straight. When we do boldface questions, I want you to think exactly the same way you do on anything else at first. Ignore the boldface, because the way to make really silly mistakes on boldface questions is to treat the boldface type the way you would in real life. So if I'm reading something, somebody sends me something, there's an email, there's something on your desk at work, there's a textbook, the thing in bold is really, really important. That's not the case here. It's just some phrase that's in bold. It doesn't mean it's important. And if you aren't really systematic about your approach, you might look at the boldface thing, decide it's more important than it is, get the question wrong. So instead, what I want you to do is say, okay, I'm going to find the heart of the passage. If there's a conclusion, I'm getting that conclusion. I'm getting it in their words. I'm thinking about support. And only once I understand the overall structure of the argument, only then do I worry about what is actually in bold and what is not. So we're going to practice that with a fairly easy, it's actually not that easy, mid-level question first. And then for the rest of the video, I'm going to give you some really tough ones. They'll get tougher and tougher as the video goes on. Some of these are nasty. Half of people get them wrong, sometimes more than that. So we talked about legalese. I mentioned it in passing. It's in the video title. The other dimension, so I'd say there's kind of 3 dimensions of what makes boldface questions hard. One is structurally, they can be more complicated. Second, they can be longer. This first one is not, but the ones we'll do later in the video are longer. They're structurally more complex. Again, those are handleable. You just have to be patient with them, and we'll show you how to do that today. Third thing is the answer choices don't always feel very intuitive. It kind of feels like legalese, kind of feels like legal language. Oh, the first is a consideration that blah, blah, blah. Okay. Get used to that. There's nothing super fancy going on there. You don't have to go study anything special about premises or any of that stuff. We'll get into some of that as the video goes on. But part of why I think the boldface questions, getting really good at them, is something that pays off beyond critical reasoning, is you see some of that legal language on 2-part analysis, in particular on data insights. So if you can get really good at powering through that language, it's going to pay off for you. Okay, I'm tired of hearing my own voice. I have a question, guys. Go ahead and take a moment. And again, warming up gently here. And I just want you to think structurally, same way we would do any other question, things we might have done in episode 1. Just think about overall structure. What's the heart of the passage? What's the support? And only then do you look at the boldface. If you do that, this will be a gentle warm up for you. All right, take a moment. And sorry about the logo. Sorry about that. Should be a little easier to read now. All right, if you need more time, feel free to take a moment. Okay, again, I promise a gentle warm up here. As always in these videos, I'm going to try to write some chunks of it on the board before I even come back, just because it's not that much fun to watch me write. But again, I am ignoring the boldface. So what does good hygiene, good process, being consistent on boldface questions really look like? Ignore the bold at first. Just think about what you're given, because again, our brains play a trick on us. The GMAT's not out to get you with this. It's just what our brains do. Things in bold are important in real life. They're not necessarily here, right? So I'm just reading it, ignoring the bold. Pretty clear structure here. I mean, this looks like any other strength and weaken assumption kind of passage. We've got a conclusion. Price of tap water in our region should be raised drastically. Well, why is that? Well, hey, the supplies have been declining for years. And what's the other reason? Well, since the price of tap water has been low, few users have bothered to adopt even easy conservation methods. So few users have adopted conservation measures. Say even easy. Okay. And notice I haven't said anything specifically about the boldface yet. But what's really nice about this one is, hey, look, we've got conclusion support. Cool. It's about as clean of a structure as we can ask for. And this one happens to be boldface number 1. And this one happens to be boldface number 2. Don't get used to it, guys. This is what an easy boldface question looks like. But remarkably, about a quarter of people miss this question anyway. And I think the reason is your brain plays tricks on you. You start looking at the bold as something more important than it is, or you get intimidated by the language, which is, again, not natural language, talking about conclusions and premises and all of that. Okay, off we go. A, the first is a conclusion for which support is provided, and which in turn supports the main conclusion. The second is the main conclusion. Not at all. Neither of these things are the main conclusion, or really conclusions at all. So A is out pretty easily. B, the first is a consideration for which the second provides an explanation. Okay, now this, I want to pick on this a little bit. So part of what you need to do here is just get used to this language. There's nothing fancy here. I'm not going to give you some crazy vocab list. Hey, I want you to know the difference between an observation, an explanation, a consideration, a premise. Don't worry about all that. Just take your time with this a little bit, okay? If you're not used to this language, take your time. It will get better over time. It's also going to get better as you do data insights, because you see some of this there as well. First is an observation for which the second provides an explanation. Wait a minute. Is the second boldface explaining the first? I don't think so. Maybe I'm not going to cross it out just because of that, but no, it's not. The second one's not explaining the first. Second half, the second is the main conclusion, but not the only conclusion. No, that's not the conclusion at all. So B is out for that reason. C, the first is a premise supporting the argument's main conclusion. Yeah, so is the second, sure. Now, a lot of people ask at this point, what's a premise? Should you worry about these definitions? A premise is just a thing we're stating that we build an argument around. Don't overthink it. Premise, factual statement. That's all it is. So is the first a factual statement? Sure, supplies have been declining for years. That's it. That's all premise really means, factual statement. Second, boldface, few years have bothered to adopt even easy conservation measures. Premise, factual statement. Okay, are these both factual statements to support the conclusion? Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. So hang on to C. D, the first is the only conclusion. The second provides an explanation for the first. We can get rid of that. We know the first is not a conclusion. And E, the first is the main conclusion. No, it's not. Second is a conclusion for which blah, blah, blah. I'm out. And our answer is C. Okay. So again, two different levels of difficulty, or dimensions of difficulty on boldface. Dimension number 1, boldface plays tricks on your brain. You start looking at it and going, oh, this is important. Notice that a lot of these answer choices, and about a quarter of people pick them. Most of the wrong answer choices are calling these things conclusions when they're not. That's how people miss them, is they think the bold is more important than it is. So just look at it, ignore the bold, think structurally, same way you do in any other critical reasoning question. Second bit, embrace the legalese. Don't get intimidated. Break it down. It's not that bad once you get used to it, I promise. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, good question here, Taha, and great to see as always. So is the first boldface an intermediary conclusion? And if it's kind of hard to do this over chat on YouTube, but what makes you say it's an intermediary conclusion is the question I would ask you if I had the pleasure of tutoring you one-on-one. And so, okay, why? What makes you say it's an intermediary conclusion? what I would say here is this is just a fact, right? So it gives you a reason why it's happening, but is this a conclusion that you're drawing? When you think about what a conclusion is, it's often a statement of kind of opinion in a way, right? So we take fact one, fact two, and from that we draw a conclusion that is not necessarily by itself a fact. Might be true, might be not true, might be supported, might be not supported, might be a better argument or a better conclusion than some other conclusion. But by definition, it's not a fact. If you conclude something, you've concluded it, right? It's your ideas. And it's not just a fact. In this case, so supplies in local freshwater reservoirs have been declining for years. Just a fact. We can go measure that. So that's something I would not call a conclusion. Does it say something about why that is? Well, yeah, it says here's why it's happening, but that would not make it an intermediary conclusion. This is just a statement of fact for that first boldface. So Taha, I hope that helps a little bit. Nazim, good question. How many questions of this type do we get in the GMAT? So I said this briefly at the beginning. So about a little bit more than, again, looking at official questions, looking at the practice test, you get about 10%, maybe just a little bit more. I'd call it 10 to 12, maybe 15% max of your critical reasoning questions. And again, part of why I like teaching these, part of it is these questions freak a lot of you guys out, understandably. I think they're really intimidating. Part of it is if you can get really good at these and get really good at the structure of these, you're going to be so much better on everything. It's also going to help you a lot on data insights. So 23 verbal questions, you'll see between 9 and 14 critical reasoning. So typically 1 or 2 of them are going to be boldface. So it's not that it's that huge, but I think it helps you build really good skills that are going to help you on absolutely everything. All right. Oh, you guys are going nuts today. I like it. Yeah, this is a good comment. I agree with this. So sometimes we take the boldface on its face value and try to create more value for boldface, even when it doesn't exist. That's exactly what happens in people's heads. They look at the bold and they create kind of value and importance for it that is not there. Ignore the bold at first. If you can get really good at doing that and just thinking structurally, this will be a whole lot easier. And yes, thank you for this. This is exactly. So part of what I've been saying about how I want you to think about these and what I want you to do with the language in these answer choices, I don't want you getting bogged down too much in the definitions. So there's a school of thought, and you see some test prep people, and no disrespect to anybody, I love everybody. You'll see me on videos with almost every test prep person out there. We have different approaches. There's nothing wrong with that. So different approaches work better for different people. But there are schools of thought out there that say, hey, here's a bunch of vocabulary you need to learn for this. I don't think that's the case when I see students try to learn a bunch of vocabulary and say, okay, I'm going to memorize the definition of a premise and a counter premise and an intermediary conclusion. I find that they kind of get into this weird memorization mode and they're not being intuitive about the argument. So what's really, really important here, as always, where do mistakes come from? They come from misreading and misinterpreting. How do boldface questions in particular induce you to misinterpret? It's because of that comment that somebody made a moment ago. You look at something that's in bold and you kind of give it greater importance than it really has in the argument. That's the most common error. Now, all of this, I think the second most common is getting intimidated by the language and the answer choices. The language isn't that hard once you get used to it. And if you think about what an intermediate conclusion is, well, it's not the main conclusion of the argument. It's some other conclusion that we get along the way. What is a conclusion? Well, a conclusion is something that we've taken some facts and we've drawn something from it. It's typically a statement of not fact, right? It's a statement of some sort of opinion, right? Some sort of synthesis of information. So again, I don't want you worrying about those definitions, but when you think about that, hey, I've drawn the conclusion based on something else. That's why this first boldface is not a conclusion. It's just a fact that's given. But I don't think there's a lot of value in memorizing a bunch of definitions here. I think as you do some of these questions, you'll get used to them. And again, we're going to do some harder ones in a moment here where it feels really tricky. Okay. Yeah, another really good question, Nazim. And again, apologies for mispronunciations. Is it a problem when you see more unknown or partly known vocab in these passages and CRs? You don't see it that often, honestly. I think if you want to practice using LSAT questions, for example, the vocab level's higher, you're more likely to run into words you don't know. GMAT, they're trying to take it easy on you. And typically, if you see a word, I would say this about reading comprehension, data insights as well. Typically, if there's a word that is unfamiliar to you, in all likelihood, it's getting defined in the context of the question, if it's in the passage. Again, there's not a lot premise. I mean, it's hard for me to even come up with words that are in these boldface questions and the answer choices that is specific, unique vocabulary that you might not know. Premise might be one of the very, very few. What does it mean? Statement of fact. Woo, why do we have a fancy word for it? I don't know, but we do. There you go. But there's not a lot of vocab. I wouldn't stress about that too much. You'll run into something once in a while. But when you do, I want you to fight to understand it in the context that's around it. And it's pretty rare on the GMAT unless your English is super shaky. So if you're a non-native speaker and your English is really weak, that's different. If I had to do GMAT critical reasoning in Spanish, I speak Spanish, my vocabulary is shaky. Yeah, I'm gonna run into trouble. But for the most part, if you're fluent in English, even as a non-native speaker, you won't see words very often that you don't know. And when you do, there's going to be context around it to help you out. It's going to be extremely rare that you're going to see a word where you're just like, I don't know what this is saying, and I need it in order to answer the question, and it's not defined somewhere. So don't stress about that. Okay. All right. That was your warm-up. Let's do one more. Great questions, live group. I really appreciate it. All right, good. Take a moment on this one. More complex structure. So good luck to you. All right, take another moment if you need to. Again, these are getting pretty tough. Pretty much everything else in this video, more than a third of people typically answer them incorrectly. As I get a little deeper into the video, we'll see how many we get to. Like half of people get them wrong. Some of these get pretty nasty. So live group, awesome. Seeing some debates between two answer choices. Perfect. Okay. So again, I'm ignoring the bold at first, always, always, always on these, and just thinking, hey, how's this argument structured? What's going on? We've got a nice clean conclusion. They kind of served it up on a silver platter. Consequently, the strategy to maximize overall profit from a new product is to charge less than the greatest possible price. Okay, great. Why is that? Well, it's kind of that previous sentence, right? So what's their support? Large profits will give competitors a strong incentive to quickly match the new product's capabilities. What I notice about the structure here, though, and again, when I say that as boldface questions get tougher, and again, this is a, I don't know, 650 level question easily, maybe 700. This is no joke. Is that the structure starts to get a little bit more complicated. They're longer, right? We have more sentences here than you typically see in an average question. So a little bit of a different structure here that kind of catches my eye. It's like, yeah, we've got a conclusion, we've got support for it in the previous sentence, but then you've got a whole lot going on before that. There's a lot of words. There's two pretty long sentences leading into it. And what's the argument really saying? The argument's saying, do this, right? So charge less than the greatest possible price. Do not do this. So many companies charge the maximum possible price. Don't do it. Charge less than that. Okay. And this, by the way, is our Boldface 2 right here. So many companies charge the maximum possible price. Well, how's that related to the conclusion? It's the opposite of the conclusion, right? Here's the conclusion. Don't do this. This is kind of the opposite. Well, not the opposite exactly, but this is what companies are doing. The argument is saying, don't do that. Okay. And then how do companies get to this? How is it that companies decide to charge the maximum possible price? Why do they do that? Well, that's where you actually have your first boldface, right? So technological advances tend to be quickly surpassed. And then there's something pretty obvious here about kind of wanting to make maximum possible products while they still can. So want large profits. Okay, so here's our Boldface 2. Here's our Boldface 1. This part right here. Technological advances tend to be quickly surpassed. So essentially, this is supporting the behavior you see here, right? So many companies charge the maximum possible price. Why do they do that? Well, it's because technological advances tend to be quickly surpassed and they want large profits. Okay, so now we see the overall structure of the argument. Conclusion, something the conclusion is sort of saying is not what you want to do. Here's the justification for this behavior. Argument also includes justification for the conclusion, but again, that part's not in bold. Okay, so now what? Let's look at the answer choices. A. The first is a consideration. Oh boy, what is a consideration? It's a phrase. Don't overthink it, guys. What's a consideration? It's just a thing we're saying. First, a consideration. Might be a fact, might be an opinion. Raised to argue that a certain strategy is counterproductive. The second presents this strategy. Doesn't sound too bad, but is the first one arguing that the second is counterproductive? Not at all. The argument as a whole argues that this second boldface is counterproductive, but the first one is not used to argue that this is counterproductive. This first boldface actually supports the second boldface in a way. So A is out. B. First is a consideration raised to support the strategy that the argument recommends. Okay, again, if you're new to this language, a little intimidating, take your time at first. You'll get used to it, I promise. First is a consideration raised to support the strategy the argument recommends. No, because what is the purpose of that phrase in that sentence? It's explaining the behavior we see in the second boldface. So right there, we could get rid of it. Let's keep going anyway. Second presents that strategy. No, because the argument is not recommending the second strategy. It's recommending the opposite. So lots of good reasons to eliminate B. C, seeing a lot of live group pick this one. First is a consideration raised to help explain the popularity of a certain strategy. Second presents that strategy. Hey, that's pretty good, right? So consideration raised, so technological advances are quickly surpassed. That supports this strategy that companies do a lot. Yeah, C's looking pretty good. D, first is an assumption rejected by the argument. Not true. The argument is not arguing against the idea that technological advances tend to be quickly surpassed. Right there, we could eliminate D, keep going anyway. Second presents that course of action. So first assumption rejected by the argument that has been used to justify a course of action. Second presents that course of action. Sure, it is the course of action in the second boldface, but that assumption, so that first boldface is not an assumption that the argument rejects at all. So D is out. E, seen a lot of live group picking this one. The first is a consideration that has been used to justify adopting a certain strategy. Good. First one is definitely used to justify adopting a certain strategy, which happens to be boldface 2. The second presents the intended outcome of that strategy. Okay. Is the second one an outcome of the strategy? It is the strategy. Charge the maximum possible price. What's the intended outcome? Make profits. But that's not what's in the second boldface. Second boldface doesn't have an outcome that's desirable. It doesn't have the profits. That's what we're after. It just has the strategy itself. So it's subtle, but that phrase intended outcome of the strategy here. Second boldface is not an intended outcome. It just is a strategy. So E is out and we've got C. All right. I was hoping somebody would ask this. Neha, thank you. Nazim, it's funny. I'm seeing two of you ask pretty much the same question. Nazim, Neha, thank you. And again, apologies for mispronunciations. Oops, sorry. That is not the same question. Should I be concerned about spending more than 2 minutes? No, definitely not right now if you're new to this. These take time, guys. These are kind of painful. Um, and a couple thoughts on it. One is that GMAT, the creators of this wonderful exam that we're all spending our time on, they're very careful to balance out the amount of time it takes to do questions. So if on average this question takes a long time, or if it is true that on average boldface questions take longer, I think that's debatable. But if that's true, they're going to balance it out with other questions that take less time. So yes, on average, you're answering questions in roughly 2 minutes on the GMAT, 23 questions, 45 minutes. Some of them are going to take you longer than others. Boldface might be among those. Don't get skittish about it. Thought one. Thought two, you'll get faster and more efficient over time. Thought three, I am not screwing around after that first warm-up question. These are hard, guys. So these should take you longer, especially when you're not used to them. So don't worry about that right now. Again, if it's taking you 5 minutes per, something's off on your process, something's funky there. But if it's more than 2 minutes, no stress, especially in the early going for you. Yeah, this is a really good question. Yeah, related to timing as well. So if you notice the first part is wrong, can you slash it and move forward? Now waste time on the second part. I'm okay with that. Yeah, as long as you're completely confident that it's wrong, but based on the first part. For the sake of the video, I'm going through all of it just because if there's something in there that somebody's struggling with, I want to make sure you see it. But in practice, as long as you're totally sure about that first part, yeah, go ahead. I think that's totally fine. Okay. Some of these are longer things to answer. So let's get to, okay. Most of these I've answered, some of them I haven't. I might circle back to some of these questions later. I'm getting some broad questions that I really like. Actually, let me pick on this one. LSAT. I wouldn't do anything blindly. So don't blindly go for LSAT. Do it thoughtfully. Do everything you do thoughtfully, intentionally. I'm picking on you a little bit here, but I want you to be really clear about what LSAT sets are and what they are not. Harder language, consistent difficulty, consistent length. So if you want to stretch and kind of do things that feel hard, kind of like this question we were just doing, LSATs are great. You're going to get used to harder language. You're going to get used to this legalese. You come back to these boldface, they're going to feel easier. There's a benefit to it. I wouldn't argue that everybody should do LSATs necessarily, right? And I think I've talked about this to some degree in almost every verbal video. And we've got some LSAT specific content out there. You can just Google GMAT Ninja, LSAT for GMAT. You'll find articles, GMAT Club on our website as well. Some of you don't need that. Some of you really don't need to be challenged with crazy, crazy hard questions, and there are cosmetic differences. So it's the same kind of reasoning, same kind of language, but the question styles can be a little bit different. So do I recommend it if you're chasing an elite score? Yep. Is it really good for exactly what you said here? Improve your concentration and discipline? Yeah. Powering through 25 of those, really good. But again, it's not for everybody. If you're on a short time horizon and you're already close to your target score, don't torture yourself with that stuff. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to another question, and I'll kind of sift through. I'm getting a lot of questions from live group, which I love, guys. I'm just struggling to get to all of them. So let's go ahead and hop into a new question, and then I might answer some of these in a minute or two. Actually, by the way, if you like us, check out the QR code. Full free GMAT video course, often taught by people who are younger, smarter, better looking than me. So if you want more of this stuff, check out the QR code. Sometimes there's ninjas in there. All right. Gonna try this one, guys. Take a minute or two. All right, if you need more time, hit that pause button, or I guess rewind button now that I've already shrunk it. Okay, again, amping up the complexity level a little bit, arguably, it feels a little bit like the last one. I think it's a little harder. Error rate on this one's about 50%. About half people miss it. So if you're struggling, I'm seeing the live group kind of eliminating and having some fun with it. You're not alone. This is tough. We're not messing around. It's about as hard as they get. Maybe we'll do one that's a little harder in a minute. We can debate whether it's hard or not. Okay. Same deal. I'm ignoring the bold. I'm ignoring the bold at first. Conclusion, nice clear one at the end. Very nice to us this time. Corporations should adopt the compromise. I cut some words off there in the interest of time, but should develop the compromise of encouraging their executives to use their corporate titles internally, but not internally. Why is that? Well, you've got a couple different whys here. I mean, one is, there's kind of the thing at the very end, since even if it's widely known that these titles outside the organization, it's not going to inhibit anything internally, right? So it causes no trouble internally. And also the title can facilitate dealings with external businesses. Well, this thing here, there's your boldface 2. That's nice. It's just support for your conclusion. Very nice. Okay, now let's talk about that first part. So your boldface 1, some corporations shun the use of executive titles. Okay, so what's this doing here? Really, it's the thing that we don't necessarily want people to do, right? So if what we're saying here is do this, so this boldface 1 here. So don't just do this, right? So shun the use of titles completely. No, I mean, the argument's basically saying, hey, have the compromise, externally use the titles, internally you don't shun them completely. And then there's evidence, so there's support for this idea in the argument, right? So that it tends to inhibit communication up and down the corporate hierarchy. Fine. How does this play into the overall argument? Conclusion, have the compromise, use titles externally, not internally. Why? While the title facilitates dealings externally, not going to hurt things internally if you're using them only externally. And so what role do these play? Boldface 2 supports your conclusion. Boldface 1 is something that the argument is basically saying, yeah, that's something that companies do, but it has its problems. Okay, good enough. Boldface language in these answer choices is always going to be a little bit different than we were thinking, but we've got the basic roadmap. We should be in pretty good shape. All right, answer choice A. The first describes a strategy that has been adopted to avoid a certain problem. Yeah, so that's something that, fair enough, right? So boldface 1 here. Some corporations shun the use of executive titles. What problem are they avoiding? It's that hierarchical stuff. It tends to inhibit communication, so cool. Second, prevents a drawback to that strategy. Well, I'll be honest with you, that's not how I was thinking about it. I was thinking about this as support for the conclusion, but that's actually true, right? So first one, this is something companies do to avoid the problem of inhibiting internal communication in the corporate hierarchy. What's the problem with that? Yeah, well, titles have a benefit, right? Should we shun titles entirely? Well, no, there's a drawback to doing that because you're losing out on the benefits of having them dealing with external businesses. I don't know. It sounds pretty good. It wasn't what I was imagining, but it's pretty good. And you'll notice, guys, I know we've talked about this in other videos in this series. I don't really anticipate anything, right? I'm trying to do my homework and making sure I'm breaking down passages, doing it thoughtfully, doing it systematically every time. I'm not guessing what the answer is exactly, right? Because the language here in A is very different than what I had in mind. And I understand that, right? So I'm trying to keep an open mind while being very clear about structure, precision of my own language. Let's see if we like B. First describes a strategy that has been adopted to avoid a certain problem. Yeah, okay, cool. Second is a consideration raised to call into question the effectiveness of that strategy, okay, as a means of achieving that goal. Close, not quite. Why? So the problem that the first one is trying to avoid, it's the internal communication, inhibition of internal communication with titles. So the second one does not call into question the effectiveness of the strategy as a means of achieving that goal. It's a separate drawback, right? So the goal of that statement in boldface 1 is to deal with the problem of internal communication. That second boldface has nothing to do with it. It's just talking about external communication. That's why we can get rid of B. C, first describes a strategy that has been adopted to avoid a certain problem. Good. The second is a consideration the consultant raises in questioning the significance of that problem, no, it's a different problem the consultant's talking about here. External communication, totally separate. So it's not addressing the significance of the problem addressed by the first boldface. Problem addressed by the first boldface, internal communication. Second boldface, it's about external communication. That's why C's out. D, the first is part of an explanation the consultant offers for a certain phenomenon. It's not an explanation, right? This is just a practice, right? It's something that companies are doing. Second, is that phenomenon? Definitely not. Second is not the phenomenon that is being explained here at all. So D is out. E, the first describes a policy for which the consultant seeks to provide a justification. Right there, we could get rid of it. The consultant is not justifying what we see in the first boldface, not at all. Saying, hey, we should be doing something a little bit different. So use them just externally, not internally. We're not trying to justify this exactly, but we can keep going. The second is a consideration the consultant raises as part of that, not at all. So this isn't, so the second boldface, it's not raised as part of the justification for the first, not at all. It's raised to kind of give you a reason why you should do the compromise instead, and not exactly do the first one. So E is out. A is our winner. Okay. So again, I'm getting questions about level of questions. I told you half of people miss it. This one's a big boy question. It is absolutely no joke. So getting lots of general questions here. And again, lots of stuff. Go Google GMAT Ninja LSAT for GMAT. You'll get lots of stuff on it, videos probably. I'm sure I've done a video on it. Definitely lots of articles. No, not every question is the same difficulty level. Don't think that. Every set of 25 questions on the LSAT is roughly the same as every other set of 25 questions. So if you miss 2 one day and 7 the next, that's you. So under 60 minutes is about the right pace for the GMAT. LSAT is 35 minutes. You are not taking the LSAT. You're using the LSAT as a tool for the GMAT. 60 minutes or under, and I want to see consistency. That's what it's really good for, is showing you that consistency. All kinds of specific things about metrics that I won't get into here in the interest of time. Okay. Yeah, this is a good question. Differences are so hard, how to spot them until you understand the underlying logic of the struggle. Yeah, it's a really good question, because so many people deal with exactly this, where, you know, it's nice to be like, hey, I'm watching Charles's videos, and he's kind of breaking down all the subtleties of the argument and all the intricacies and kind of showing how they're important, and great. And then you try to do it on your own. It's really hard to see them sometimes. Some of this is just practice. I'll be honest in saying, if you don't have a lot of experience reading complicated texts, so for people who maybe have mostly technical training, mostly mathematical training, and haven't just taken a lot of classes where you sit there and read literature or read hard language that is not specific to a field, sometimes you're just not used to reading this stuff, and it just takes some time. That's most of it, honestly. I think the other part of it is just making sure you have structure to everything you do. The thing it's in the short run, it's hard to get better at reading. In the long run, you definitely can get better at reading as you get used to powering your way through these nuanced little passages. What you can control from moment number one when you start studying is always having structure. So sometimes I see people say, yeah, I just can't pick up on these nuances. Their ability to read is great. That's not the problem. But they're focusing on the wrong thing. They're not thinking structurally. They're not getting to the heart of the author's argument. So it feels like you're missing nuances, and it feels like it's a reading issue, but sometimes it's just, hey, did you stop and think about the conclusion? Did you stop and think about the support? Or do you just kind of skim it as a bunch of facts and go on? So some of it is about your process. And again, that's why we focus on that in all of these videos. Great question. And be patient with yourself, because it takes some time. Good question here, if I'm reading this correctly. This week, my accuracy is around 60 to 70%. And I assume what you mean here is on a certain question. So let's suppose that you're getting, I don't know, 60% right on boldface, but doing better on other question types. Should you focus only on those questions? I would be very careful with that for a bunch of reasons. One is that, you know, hey, we're doing these videos where we isolate a question type and kind of give you a strategy for it. But boy, there's a whole lot of overlap from question to question. Overall good hygiene is the same every single time. I'm saying essentially the same things for boldface as I did in episode number 1 for general questions, or for assumption questions or whatever. Think structurally, be precise with your language. So there's not, if your skills are good and your process is good, you shouldn't really have to drill individual question types that much. Second problem is sometimes there's not all that many of them. So again, these are 10, 12, maybe 15. I think it's closer to 10 or 12% of all critical reasoning questions. You can take the official guide, the verbal guide, and go, hey, that's 200 and some critical reasoning questions. Okay, so there's 20 some boldface in there. So you're going to practice them. You'll do them all today and then you run out. So that's not going to help you. I would be really careful about that strategy. And especially for verbal, I think using non-official questions can be an issue. So I would not recommend binging on individual critical reasoning question types too much because, again, you're going to run out of them. And number two, the overall skills, the overall strategies are so similar from question type to question type. I would be very careful about binging. I think that can work against you a little bit. Okay. Um, and yes. Yeah. So 60 minutes, if you're doing LSAT sets, 60 minutes will be about right to get you through the verbal section on time. So if you can hit around 60 minutes or under on both reading comp and critical reasoning on your LSAT sections of 25, that'll put you in good shape. If you're only getting to 19 or 20, probably gonna have a hard time finishing the GMAT section on time. Okay. Yeah, great question here. I'll put this question back on the screen real quick, and then we'll do one more and call it a day. So yeah, same option for the first part. So kind of a similar question we had earlier. So if you know that the first half is wrong, can you just cross it out without reading the second half? I'm fine with that, but you better be certain. If you're like, well, I'm pretty sure that's kind of crappy, read the second part just to be safe. But in this case, yeah, if you're totally confident that that first part, taking this generally, that the first half is wrong, you can cross it out. Now, what I think you're now I'm thinking about it, what I think you're asking here is because the first part is right on those first three, can you eliminate D and E? Don't do that. Because what if there's another way to phrase it so that it would be correct? So I wouldn't just say because A, B, and C, the first half is right, I'm going to eliminate D and E, because they might find some alternate way to say it that is perfectly valid. So I would not eliminate D and E because the first part of A, B, and C happens to be correct. I would look at those carefully. Um, so yeah, don't eliminate D and E because the first half of A, B, and C are right. If you were sure that the first half of A, B, and C, for example, was wrong, then you could wipe all those out if you wanted to, as long as you're certain. All right, let's do another question. How much time do we have left? Don't have a lot of time left. Let's do this one. So this is actually had somebody ask about this on the GMAT Club forum about an hour ago. I read stuff on the forum, so if you have a question that you really want to go through, I will pick it out for you. More than half of people miss this. This is a no joke question. 700-ish, 700 plus. I'll shut my mouth. Good luck to you. All right, if you need more time, take it. All right. And again, more than half people missed this. Seeing the live group, not doing too badly, guys. Some of you are struggling, but again, tough question. As always, I've said it a whole bunch of times. I'm ignoring the bold at first and going, hey, do I have a conclusion here? You've got it right before the second boldface. So the reasoning might well be over optimistic. Now, I can get into kind of the why here, right? Which is that executives have been known, it's that last sentence, right? Have been known to buy shares in their own company in a calculated attempt to dispel negative rumors about the company's health. So this boldface 2 here clearly is in support of your overall conclusion. Okay, cool. Now, all that said, I think it's really important to make sure you understand the reasoning. So if the conclusion is the reasoning might be over optimistic, well, what exactly is that reasoning? Well, kind of the heart of that is that the worrisome rumors, what a great word, worrisome. Your challenge today, use the word worrisome in everyday speech. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. All right, worrisome rumors must be false. Is that right? Or the language right there? My matters right? Yeah, must be false. So, and why is that? Well, top execs have been buying shares. Buy shares in their own company. So buy shares in their own bank. So here's your boldface 1, by the way, right here. And that must mean that they must have faith in, they evidently have faith in the health of the bank's financial soundness, right? Evidently have faith. And I'm just going to say soundness. I think it's running off the screen there. Okay. Great. Fine. Sorry for the this covering it up here. Okay. So we see the reasoning, right? So there's the argument that, hey, the bank executives, so these worrisome rumors about the bank's health, they must be false. Why? The top executives are buying shares, boldface 1. They evidently have faith in the soundness, the bank's financial soundness. Okay. But what's the argument really saying? Your conclusion is, hey, that's over optimistic. Why? So the executives are buying shares in a calculated, might be buying shares. So executives have been known to buy shares in their own company in a calculated attempt to dispel negative rumors. Okay. Oh, this is great. I'm seeing, seeing all kinds of arguments here in the live group. Awesome, guys. So A, the first describes evidence that has been taken as supporting a conclusion. Yeah, exactly, right? That's exactly right. So this right here is being used to support this conclusion. The worrisome rumors must be false. Is it the author's conclusion? No. But is this evidence that has been taken as supporting a conclusion? Yeah, definitely. And the second gives a reason for questioning that support. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually, because the second one helps support this conclusion. In other words, it questions whether this is really support for this, right? So it questions all this reasoning, say, hey, top executives are buying shares, but does that really support the idea that the worrisome rumors must be false? Because what if they're just doing it, kind of in a calculated attempt to dispel rumors? A's looking pretty good. Now, as always, a question we get all the time, and for those of you that watched a lot of our videos, you've heard me say this, I'm never falling in love with A. So I'm going to go through the rest of them anyway, because what if I misinterpreted something? What if I misread something? I do it. You'll see me do it live. I might be doing it right now. Who knows? B, the first describes evidence that has been taken as supporting a conclusion. Okay, good. The second states a contrary conclusion that is the main conclusion of the argument. No, this isn't a conclusion, right? This is just supporting this guy. So B is out because it is not the main conclusion of the argument. C, the first provides evidence in support of the main conclusion of the argument. No, it's not. Definitely not support for the main conclusion, right? It's a thing people are doing, but it doesn't support the conclusion. We probably could cross it out there. I'm going to keep going anyway. The second states that conclusion. Again, the second part is not the main conclusion at all. This is the main conclusion. This just supports it. D, the first describes a circumstance that the argument as a whole seeks to explain. This is tempting for a lot of people. I see a lot of people choose this one. Seeing a lot of people in the live group. Not that many, actually, which is interesting. But some of you guys are picking it. Statistically, what we see is this is, I think, the most popular wrong answer. And I think by a lot, if memory serves. The circumstance the argument as a whole seeks to explain. Tempting. But when you think about what the argument is really trying to do, so whenever you get some phrasing like this, you'll see it on reading comp too sometimes, What's your primary purpose? What are we really trying to do? On critical reasoning, hey, what is the argument trying to do? Argument's trying to do this, right? Argument's trying to say the reasoning might be over optimistic. Is the argument trying to explain why the executives have been buying shares in our bank? No. The argument's trying to say, right, if you're taking that to say that the company's healthy because executives have faith in your company, you might be mistaken. This is what the argument's out to prove. It's not out to explain why this is happening. It's just saying, hey, that reasoning is not necessarily right. It might be over optimistic. So that's why the first half of D is wrong. Second gives the explanation that the argument seeks to establish. Yeah, it's a little weird because it's a little bit dependent on the first half, right? So is this the explanation that we're trying to establish for this, for why they're buying shares? Not exactly, because the author is not saying that this is definitely what they're doing. It's not the core argument. It's just saying, hey, this is a thing that top executives have been known to do, right? It happens. And that's why this reasoning might be over optimistic. It's not seeking to establish that this is a fact at all. It's saying, hey, keep in mind, this happens. Therefore, your reasoning that the bank is fine might be over optimistic. So D is not so far off, but when you think about what is the heart of the passage, so one of the things you're tired of hearing me say, find the heart of the passage, find the heart of the passage. D is not addressing the heart of the passage because this is the heart of the passage, not explaining top execs' behavior and why they're buying shares. E, the first describes the circumstance that the argument as a whole seeks to explain. Again, just had a long rant about that. That is not correct. The second provides evidence in support of the explanation that the argument seeks to establish. Again, the argument's not trying to explain the first boldface. The argument's trying to prove or trying to argue this, that the reasoning that the bank is healthy might be over optimistic. It's not trying to explain why exactly the bank execs are buying shares. So I don't blame you one bit if you struggle to eliminate D and E, D in particular. Totally fair, totally common. Again, super hard question here, but our winner here is A. Okay. Any questions here that I think are worth answering in our final 3 minutes? Guys, live group, awesome. I'm seeing so much, like I'm struggling to keep up with your questions today and your comments, and it makes me really happy. I like this comment, Neha. I think this is great. I think this is kind of, I don't know, kind of the right psychology of doing boldface questions. Yeah, you're going to get used to these, and they feel funny and they feel weird. And again, you're going to see this quite a bit on data insights as well. Two-part analysis in particular, you're going to see they get a lot of these kind of critical reasoning like questions. One person's talking, another person's talking, and the answer choices feel a lot like the boldface questions sometimes. You'll get used to it, right? It feels weird. This isn't how we talk in real life. And I think that's one of the things that makes boldface difficult, especially when you're new to them. You will get used to it. I like how you're thinking, Neha. I think that's great. Yeah, this is. I'm sorry that you were struggling with the plan construct specifically. Cool comment to see, guys. We're going to do at least 2, maybe 3 more in this live series. But the plan construct questions, we might focus on one of those in a future episode. So thank you for that comment. And again, more broadly, guys, yeah, tag me on the forum. I can't answer everything. Tag me here on YouTube. There is a forum thread specifically dedicated. Sorry to come back to this one. Specifically dedicated to this live series, GMAT Ninja Wednesdays. I try to be here every Wednesday. Once we're done with critical reasoning, we'll do some other things on Wednesdays. That should be in the video description. If not, Google GMAT Ninja Wednesdays, GMAT Club. Tag me in there at GMAT Ninja. That's where people are kind of asking questions. Actually, this question we just did was a request from somebody whose username is Eat, and I like eating. So, and it just so happened that question was already in my deck, but I prioritized it. So, yeah, if more of you are say, hey, I'm struggling with plan construct. If what you're doing is you're looking at your score report, I wouldn't necessarily take those kind of subcategories on your score report. Oh, plan construct versus whatever else they have in there. I wouldn't take that too seriously. But some people do struggle with questions that involve planning. If enough of you do, tag me over on the forum and we'll prioritize it in the series. Okay, I think that is a really good stopping point. So, all right. Thank you so much, everybody. Nazim, thank you for that. Check out on the GMAT Ninja channel. Done a couple of videos on the use of AI and how it does and doesn't help you. So again, this comment and that video might age like old milk instead of fine wine, but AI will give you some very average things. Don't over rely on it for the GMAT or for your essays. I feel really strongly about that right now with the current generation of technology. So check out those videos over on our channel if you're curious about any of that. Thank you so much, Nazim. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Love the live group. Really appreciate you today. Bring your friends next week. We will be here more critical reasoning for at least a couple more weeks. And depending on what you guys want, we'll do more stuff after that. All right. Have fun studying, everybody. Thank you.